same old songs just once more. My last night here with you. Maybe yes, maybe no. I kind of lied it your way. How you shyly placed your eyes on me. Did you ever know that I had mine on you? Darling, so there you are, with that look on your face, as if you never heard, as if you never down. Shall I be the one for you, who pinches you softly but sure? If frown is shown, then I would know that you are no dreamer. So let me come to you, close as I wanna be, close enough for me to feel a heart beating fast, and stay there as I whisper how I loved your peaceful eyes on me. Did you ever know that I had mine on you? Darling, so share with me your love if you have enough, your tears if you're holding back a pain if that's what it is. How can I let you know I'm more than the dress and the pose? Just reach me out, then you will know that you are not dreaming. Darling, so there